Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. So I just wanted to take a real few seconds, maybe a minute. Someone left in the comments that Augason Farms was having a 30% off sale, and I really didn't know about it. I hadn't checked their site. I usually check it in the beginning of the week, but I had not checked it. So I just wanted to let you guys know that they're having a sale, and I just wanted to show you a couple of things that I hope you already know, but I think it's important for you to know because I do recommend a lot of the Augason Farms products, but let me show you a few that I don't recommend. All right. And I'm sorry, Augason Farms, but this is just the truth. You guys need to change the way that you do things. All right. You have to do it for the best of the community, not just for the bottom dollar. Okay. So black beans. These black beans is 5 pounds of black beans. All right. This I would never purchase. Why? Because you can get a lot more bang for your buck if you buy black beans, all right, that are dry from wherever you get them from, the dollar store or the supermarket, wherever. And I'm sure that you'll be able to get 5 pounds of black beans for a lot less than $10.99. I know I can get about 9 pounds of black beans for $11. So I can get almost twice as much. Right? And once I go ahead and take that 9 pounds of black beans and put it into a $1 Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber, they're going to last me just as long as they are in this container. All right. Other than that, this is actually a pretty good product. I've tried this before. It doesn't taste like apple juice, but it's close enough, and it's a nice treat to have for long term. Let's see. What else? What else would I not buy? You guys already know that I don't really like entrees. I like ingredients-based things. Like this pancake mix is good. You can actually make muffins with it as well. And I do believe that now the pancake mixes that they sell, they don't put any leavening in it so that the leavening won't go bad. So what you have to do is you have to keep a supply of tartar sauce and baking soda. I believe it is baking soda or baking powder. No, it's baking soda and tartar sauce. All right, ends up making your leavening. All right. I love their vegetables. All right. But this is another thing right here, ladies and gentlemen. Why are you going to go and pay $8 for less than 5 pounds of white rice when you can go to one of your big box stores like Sam's Clubs, Costco's, get a 50-pound bag for $21, $22, and then go ahead and put that 50-pound bag into about 2 5-gallon Mylar bags. All right, that's going to cost you about $3 or $4, and you'll have 50 pounds instead of, let's call this 5 pounds because it's close enough. You'll have 10 times as much rice, and you'll end up spending less than half of what it would cost you to buy it prepackaged. So there are some things that I do recommend that you get. I really like the ingredients-based things. All right, like this also, you can get a 50-pound bag of oats probably for a lot less than this, and you can package it yourself for, $5 or $10 depending on how much you get. There are some things that I do recommend that you get, but not all things are a good price. Now, if you're the type of person that has a lot of money, that you really would rather just pay the premium for someone else to package it for you, then go ahead. By all means, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I do know that most people don't have that extra money to spend, all right, to have somebody package something for them and then charge them 2 to 3 times more than what they can actually get it for at the store and package it themselves. All right, so having said that, I'm going to go ahead and start our video now. I hope you guys enjoy this video. I'm sorry that it's a little bit long, but you guys know that I can talk, but there is a great message behind this video that I have. Hello, YouTubers. Alaska Prepper here. So I came across this article, and I'll leave you guys the link so you guys can go take a look at it yourselves if you like. And it reminded me of something that happened to me when I was still in the military. So the name of the article is FDR's 1933 Gold Confiscation was a bailout of the Federal Reserve. And when I read this, it reminded me very much of a conversation that I had with a military officer. And I'm not going to go into detail of rank or anything like this. But this person was of pretty high rank, and he did hold an important role in budgeting for the military in the United States, strategical budgeting, right? And to give you a little background real quick on what I was doing at a military financial conference, because that's where this conversation took place that I had. Let me let you know a brief history of my military career. When I grew up in the Army, so pretty much when I started out in the Army, I was in a combat role. I was a forward observer. And what's a forward observer? It's the soldier that takes orders from his commander on the ground, wherever they are, and orders indirect fire, either from mortars, from cannons, from fixed wing, rotary, even from the guns from a ship, although that's pretty rare. That was my job. Well, after a eventful tour in Afghanistan, I had to change my MOS, my military occupational specialty, because after that I wasn't able to perform that job anymore because it was a very physical job. I was embedded with an infantry unit. So I chose to do finance in the Army because I always liked numbers. And in the Army, there's two types of finance. There's one that's called military pay, which is where you work on the military pay of service members. So if a service member has a problem or something, they come to your office and you fix their problem and fix their pay. And then there's another side, which is budgeting, where you budget or track the budget, commitments and obligations of whatever unit or units you're assigned to track that budget. All right, and you keep track of everything that's being spent. You keep track of everything that's coming in that you have, and all that kind of stuff. Excuse me. So here, about 10 years ago or so, I went to a military pay convention, and we were having, like, I don't want to call it classes, but like seminars throughout the day. And one of the seminars was budgeting for the US, right? For the country, not just for a unit. And during the seminars, they allowed you to ask questions. And throughout the seminar, they were talking about how much they had anticipated for the US to spend during the next fiscal year that was coming up, and how much funds they were expecting to bring in from tax payments and whatever other revenue streams the government may have besides taxes. Well, it didn't balance out. We were going to be spending, we had already projected during that seminar, the guest speaker, which was an insider, had already projected that we were going to be spending as a nation more than what we were going to take in. So I raised my hand. And I remember my sergeant major, about halfway through my question, tugging at my pants, kind of like telling me, hey, slow it down and hurry up and sit down. Kind of like, yeah, this is not the kind of question you want to be asking. So this was my question. And I forgot exactly what the numbers were, but all I remember is that I know that during the seminar, the speaker stated that we were going to be spending so much and taking in so much. So my question was this to the speaker, and it was, when I learned how to do budget through the Army, the first lesson I learned was that you never spend more than what you have, because that is a violation of what's called an Anti-Deficiency Act. If you spend more money than what you have, you're violating the Anti-Deficiency Act. And then I asked him, I said, and here you are telling us that we are not only spending more than what we have, but we're planning on spending more than what we have. So here we are being taught as budget NCOs, or not, budget non-commissioned officers, or budget technicians, whichever you want to call it. Here we are being taught that we never spend more than what we have. And here you are telling us that we are planning on spending more than what we have, not knowing where the rest of the money is going to come from. And at that time, my sergeant major tugged down on my pants hard enough to where I knew that I needed to sit down, and the answer never came. My question was pretty much, how can you be telling us that we can't spend more than what we have because it's against the law? But you're telling us flat out that we are already as a nation planning to spend more than what we have. So after that seminar, I was in the hallway and I introduced myself to the speaker, which was a high ranking officer who actually worked with budgeting for the nation. And I asked him, I said, and it was a male. So I said, sir, I introduced myself. He introduced himself. And I said, can I ask you a few questions? And he said, sure. I said, from my understanding, what you're telling me is that the US government is spending more than what it's taking in. How is that possible? And he pretty much told me that it's because we have no other choice. So he did not say, well, no, this is why. This is how we get around that. This is how it's legal for us to do this. He pretty much said, we're doing it because we have to. And then I asked him, I said, you do know that every time that the government prints new money, that's stealing money and stealing wealth from every citizen of the United States that holds that money and anyone outside of the United States that holds that money or Federal Reserve note. I said money, but it's really Federal Reserve note. And he looked at me and he said, we really don't have a choice. We have to do it. So he blatantly told me that even though the government knows that the printing of money out of thin air takes the value of the money that you worked for down, that it still does it because it has no choice. And the truth of the matter, ladies and gentlemen, is that the government has no choice. He was telling me the truth. The government has no choice but to allow the inflation of the monetary base if the government wants to stay in existence. Because you see, ladies and gentlemen, the government produces nothing. The government knows how to take from one and spend it, and or take from one and give it to another. And it's all under the pretense of national security and for the well-being of the nation. Now, if you believe that that's true, that's fine. I'm not here to tell you what you should think or what you should believe. But what I'm here to tell you is that you need to understand what it is that happens to the value of the Federal Reserve note every time that the government prints more money. And when people hear print money, they think that at the Federal Reserve there's a huge printing press and that they're just printing trillions of dollars. Well, there is a huge printing press. I'm sure there's several of them. And they are printing dollar bills and, in tens and 20s and 50s and hundreds. But the majority of the money that is being printed out of thin air, and when I say out of thin air, what I mean is that that money was not created through the use of capital, investment, and or labor. So for you to create your money, for you to be able to realize money into your hands, you have to expend your energy, your time, your worth, meaning your skills. That's what you have to do in order to create your wealth, is take capital, meaning that if it costs you $100 a month to drive back and forth to work, and if it costs you $20 a month to supply yourself with clothes for the job that you're doing, that's your capital. That is the money that you're investing into going out to build more wealth. You're using your skills that you learned over time and that you more than likely paid money to learn that skill. So, for example, let's say you went to school to become an engineer. It took capital for you to learn that skill, and it took your time and effort to learn that skill. Therefore, that skill that you have as an engineer is wealth to you. It's your wealth. So when you create wealth by the use of your skill, your time, and your capital investment into going to work somewhere and do a job, you are therefore creating wealth. When the government creates money out of thin air, they just make it. They take some cotton and paper, mix it together, make this nice fibrous sheets. They put ink on them that has a denomination, of one, or they even still have $2 bills, 5, 10, 20, hundreds. And they say, okay, this paper is now worth $100 worth of goods. That's what I mean by creating money out of thin air. That's one way. The other way that money is created out of thin air is through fractional reserve banking. When you go get a mortgage, let's say $200,000, that bank enters $200,000 into that computer, and they effectively hand you over a check for $200,000, which is immediately turned into the person who is selling you the home and then deposited into their checking account. Now, through fractional reserve banking, that bank only has to have 10% of the nominal amount of the loan that they just gave you. So if you take out a loan for $200,000, $180,000 just got created out of thin air. When that $200,000 that you borrowed is turned over to the seller of the home, that person takes that money and that money goes out into the economy. All right, they take that money and they pay their lumber bill, they pay their people that are working for them, they pay for all of the overhead that they have for their business, and so on and so on. They pay their salaries and so on. So all of that money is released into the economy. Only $20,000 of that $200,000 was actually earned by the use of capital, by the use of your skills, your labor, and your time. That's how money is created out of thin air. Now, why is that such a big deal? Because when money is created without someone having earned it, without someone having used their capital, their skill, their time, their investment, it takes away the value of all of the other money that's out there. So think about how many times every day a new mortgage is created. Think about the quantitative easing that the Federal Reserve does. Even though they say that they're not doing it, they are doing it. You know why they're doing it? Because we have a deficit. As long as we have a deficit, we are doing quantitative easing, just not with cash, but with bonds and treasury notes. And when those bonds and treasury notes mature, they have to be paid out. Well, how are they going to be paid out if we can't even sustain our spending with the dollars that we receive in taxes as a nation? They have to create money out of thin air. That's how it's done. And when all of that money is created out of thin air and it's added to the economy, what happens? People say, oh, inflation happens. No, the actual creation of money out of thin air is inflation. All right, creating money out of thin air inflates the monetary supply. A symptom of inflation is the price of goods and services going up, which is what we've been seeing every year for my entire life. So back in 1933, I believe that a $5 bill would buy you what today takes a $100 bill to buy. So since 1933 to present, we have had over 2,000% inflation. Why is that? Because money, ever since then, money has been created out of thin air, whether we were told that it had or not. So chew on that for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and read this article. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I am here to tell you that you should be doing your own research and you should learn everything that you can learn about the monetary system under which we live. Because it was made to do one thing. It was made to deprive you of your wealth. Think about that. A monetary system that was made to deprive the average citizen of their wealth. It is the hidden tax that almost no one, comparatively to the amount of people that we have in the US, almost no one knows about. Everyone complains about taxes, right? But they don't complain about monetary creation because they don't understand how it is that monetary creation strips them of their wealth little by little over time. So you need to do your homework and do your research. I am a huge advocate of precious metals. And for those that are going to say that in the Bible it says that one day they'll be throwing their silver and their gold into the streets, I actually looked into that and I actually talked to someone that knows about that stuff. And this is what they told me. Now you can take it for what it's worth. This is what they told me, that many people don't understand that verse. That by they, when it says they will be throwing their gold and silver onto the streets? By they, the word they was meant to encompass the money changers, the people that create money out of thin air, that manipulate the money system. That is who they is supposed to be. So pretty much the bankers. Why? Because the bankers took God's money and manipulated it into their own gold and silver. The money changers' gold and silver is not God's money. Their gold and silver is the money that they made out of thin air, that is in all actuality almost worthless, but there is value put upon them because it is forced onto the average person by laws that are enacted by governments. So think about that. I would love to hear some comments on that one. So let's go ahead and read this really quick. FDR's 1933 gold confiscation was a bailout of the Federal Reserve Bank. President FDR's 1933 executive order outlawing the private ownership of gold in the United States was arguably unconstitutional. But why did he do it? Many historians and economists point to efforts to get the economy moving again as the reason. The theory being that people were hoarding gold and the velocity of money in circulation needed to be sped up. For those of you that don't know what the velocity of money is how quickly money is exchanged in the economy. Pretty much means how many transactions does it take for that dollar to completely be spent throughout the economy. And the reason why velocity of money is very important to the government is because with every transaction, that money gets taxed. But the real reason for the gold confiscation was a bailout of the privately owned Federal Reserve Bank, and the evidence has been printed right in front of our faces. Paper replaces specie, and what they mean by specie is actual physical money. During the 1800s, paper was suspect in the eyes of many, meaning they didn't trust it. Nobody would ever choose a government-issued $20 note over a $20 coin. Gradually, during the late 1800s and early 1900s, confidence in government paper money increased to the point where it was widely accepted. People accepted the money because they felt confident they could exchange it at the U.S. Treasury or any Federal Reserve Bank for gold at any time. It even said on the notes, without the gold exchange clause printed directly on the notes, the public would have been much less likely to accept them. Silver certificates and the United States notes circulated alongside gold certificates, which were legally interchangeable dollar for dollar. The Fed and easy money. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was established and it began issuing Federal Reserve notes the following year. Once free of the restrictions imposed by the limitations of available physical gold for coinage, the quantity of dollars in circulation increased dramatically. And that's the point right there, ladies and gentlemen. Once free of the restrictions imposed by the limitations available physical gold for coinage, the quantity of dollars in circulation increased dramatically. That is what keeps a government's spending in check, is having that dollar affixed to something that cannot be printed out of thin air. And that's why gold has been used throughout history. It's because if you want to go get gold, you have to actually expend capital, you have to have the skill to do it, and you have to use your time to get it. All right, that's why it's historically been money. The increase was mostly in the form of paper money, not specie. So what they're saying is that their increase was mostly in reserve notes and not gold. The result was an economic boom, also known as the Roaring Twenties. But like all artificially induced stimulus, it came to a crash in the fall of 1929. The burden of overextended credit was the culprit. Prior to the formation of the Federal Reserve, money in circulation was considered copper, silver, and gold coins, United States notes, silver certificates, and gold certificates. All of these were non-interest bearing, were issued directly by the U.S. Treasury, and did not have any debt associated with their issue. And ladies and gentlemen, when they say did not have any debt associated with their issue, this is why the Federal Reserve system was made to fail from the beginning. All right, listen to this. Let's say you're the Federal Reserve Bank and you're issuing your very first loan, because that's the only thing the Federal Reserve Bank can do. All they can do is issue loan. Every time they print paper and give it to the government, it's a loan. They're not just giving it, it's a loan. So they're printing paper out of thin air and they're loaning it to the government with interest attached. The only way that it can get paid back to the Federal Reserve is with dollars. So if they loan you $1, you're going to have to give them back $1 with interest. So let's take a look at the very first loan that the Federal Reserve ever made to the government. And I'm just going to pick $1,000 really quick, all right? Let's say the Federal Reserve said, okay, here, U.S. government, here's $1,000 of Federal Reserve notes, and you're going to go ahead and pay me back, let's say 1%, all right? So it would be $1,010 is what you have to pay me back. Well, since the Federal Reserve is the only entity that can print the Federal Reserve notes, when they lend you the $1,000, how in the world can you pay them back $1,010 if there's only $1,000 in existence? You see, so this system was made from the beginning to never be able to pay back a loan. There is no possible way that we can ever pay back our debt to the Federal Reserve. Never. And it was done that way on purpose. Notes issued by the Federal Reserve, however, were generally lent out with interest due. So for every Federal Reserve note in circulation, someone needed that dollar to pay off debt. During the Roaring '20s, a lot of people took on debt, resulting in a great credit expansion. When only physical gold and silver was used as money, institutions were very cautious about lending it out because if the debtor defaulted, the creditor would be out some serious money. But with the advent of the Federal Reserve notes, the bank was more willing to lend, and with easier qualification terms, people stepped up to the window. The increased willingness to lend was due to the fact that the item being lent out was just a piece of replaceable paper, not a hard to get piece of gold. Sure, the notes said redeemable in gold, otherwise they may have been refused in commerce. But few members of the public actually exchanged such notes for actual gold, and thus the Federal Reserve was free to lend almost at will with little regard for loan losses. When the interest burden of all the new credit began to weigh more heavily on the general economy, the inevitable credit contraction led to the stock market crash and the Great Depression. Everyone was suddenly reluctant to borrow. Banks were reluctant to lend, and the velocity of money in circulation slowed to a crawl. The financial footing of the United States became shaky. European countries, which were holding substantial quantities of U.S. gold class notes, began presenting them to exchange for physical gold. The U.S. government's fixed price was $20.67 per troy ounce, had been in effect for some time. But as the Great Depression deepened, the free market price of gold started creeping up above that. This was an indication that confidence in gold class notes was starting to wane. A gold run on the Federal Reserve Bank was imminent, and that was something that couldn't be tolerated. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, governments were starting to, or countries were starting to realize that there is no way that the U.S. has as much gold in reserve to accommodate all of these bills that are out in circulation. So they started doing something that may sound kind of familiar to you. In the late 60s, early 70s, when France initiated a gold run on our Federal Reserve, which resulted in President Nixon from decoupling the dollar from gold. All right, on the 15th of August, 1971, when he said that, from now on, gold is no longer exchanged with a dollar. You're just going to have to trust the government that our word is good. And the reason that a gold run couldn't be tolerated is that neither the Federal Reserve nor U.S. Treasury had anywhere near enough gold to back all the gold certificates and Federal Reserve notes that were in circulation. And printing more of these notes would only erode confidence in them even further. The gold fractional reserve system was at an end of the road. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the exact same thing that happened to get us off the Bretton Woods system. This is the same thing that happened to get us off the Bretton Woods system, where the dollar was backed up by 40% gold. And that was in 1971. So if you all remember, I did a video a while back where I was talking about the business cycle. And the reason the business cycle is about 80 years or so is because people forget what happened in history. So here you go. Maybe this took a little less than 80 years, but there was a big world war in between them, and that probably helped out as far as people forgetting why it is that these things happen. So pretty much the exact same thing that happened in the 30s happened in the early 70s. And in each of those instances, it is the people that ended up having their dollars devalued. For example, look at it this way. If you made $20 in an hour, And then all of a sudden, just like in 1933, President Roosevelt devalued the dollar by 40 something percent when he repriced gold from $20.67 to $35. If the next day that dollar that cost you 1 hour of your labor could now only buy you 60% of what it could buy you yesterday, you effectively just lost 40% of the hour of labor that you had to do for that $20. So when I say that this system is made to strip us of our wealth, what I mean is it strips us of the time that we invested in earning those funds that we call money. So whenever you hear inflation, whenever you hear the Federal Reserve Bank president, Powell, I think is his name, whenever you hear them saying we need more inflation, what they're saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that they need more of your wealth. Whenever you hear the president say, yes, we need to get more inflation, we need more inflation, we need more quantitative easing, we need interest rates to go down so that people can borrow more and put more fake money into the economy. What they are effectively saying is that they need more of your wealth. They need to confiscate more of your wealth without you authorizing it. Here it says the total face value of gold class Federal Reserve notes issued prior to 1933 was equivalent to about 54,000 metric tons of gold. And at that time, we only had about 6,000. If 75% of them were outstanding in 1933, that would still be 40,000 metric tons of gold that the Federal Reserve Bank and the Treasury didn't have. Even taking the extreme low estimate of only 37% of the Federal Reserve notes remaining, that would still be over 20,000 metric tons of gold. With U.S. gold reserves at 6,000 tons, this would be a shortfall of 14,000 tons. But those 6,000 tons were needed to cover the U.S. Treasury gold certificates. So at the very minimum, Federal Reserve notes to the tune of 20,000 metric tons of gold were circulating naked in 1933. And pretty much what this is saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that before 1933, there was a whole bunch of gold and silver or gold certificates handed out, right? And they're saying that if at the very minimum, only 37% of those notes were still available, at the very minimum, the U.S. would have still needed 20 metric tons of gold in order to cover all of the outstanding Federal Reserve notes or gold certificates that were out in the economy. We only had 6,000, and that 6,000 was already used up for the Treasury bills or the Treasury notes that were out in circulation. So we had enough gold to cover the Treasury notes, all right, or the Treasury gold notes, but we had an outstanding amount of 20,000 metric tons of gold, all right, for Federal Reserve notes that were out in circulation. So we were pretty much 20,000 metric tons in the hole. So along came FDR. One of the very first things he did was issue an executive order basically outlawing the private ownership of gold bullion. U.S. Treasury gold certificates were no longer legal tender when held by the general public, unless exchanged at the U.S. Treasury or the Federal Reserve Bank for non-gold paper. So pretty much saying unless exchanged for Federal Reserve notes. The U.S. Treasury could then transfer 6,000 metric tons of gold to the Federal Reserve as a token backing for the full faith and credit of the United States. So pretty much what they did is they said, you're no longer going to be able to exchange these Treasury notes for gold. Okay, so now they relieved themselves of that 6,000 metric tons of gold that they had covering the Treasury notes and pretty much gave it to the Federal Reserve. Reportedly, the U.S. Treasury sent gold certificates to the Federal Reserve in exchange for Federal Reserve notes. So the net result of this exchange was the privately controlled Federal Reserve Bank held U.S. Treasury gold certificates backed by U.S. Treasury gold, while the U.S. Treasury held Federal Reserve notes backed by credit. These actions bailed out the privately controlled Federal Reserve Bank, which as of 1933 would no longer be in danger of collapsing due to a shortfall of 20,000 or more metric tons of gold. And ladies and gentlemen, if you guys remember, or if you guys know this, the Bretton Woods system, which happened in around 1944 or so, that system backed the US dollar by 40%. All right, so 6 metric tons of 20,000 metric tons that they owed. Remember, they transferred the 6 metric tons to the Federal Reserve, which was in the whole 20 metric tons. All right, that's just shy of 40%. That's about 30%. So you see, can you see how they came about the amount of 40% backing the dollar with gold for the Bretton Woods system, which was the system that we were on from 44 all the way to 71? So they pretty much stole the gold from the American people and gave it to a privately owned bank in order to bail it out. During a fireside chat on 7 May 1933, Roosevelt basically admitted that gold cloth obligations far exceeded the amount of gold held by the U.S. Treasury and Federal Reserve. In fact, the total gold obligation far exceeded the amount of gold in the entire world, not even counting corporate gold obligations. Behind government currency, we have, in addition to the promise to pay, a reserve of gold and small reserve of silver, neither of them anything like the total amount of the currency. That was his quote. In the same speech, Roosevelt outlined that the total U.S. gold reserve amounted to between $3 and $4 billion, worth 4,500 to 6,000 metric tons, and that all the gold in the world was valued at 11 billion, 16.5 metric tons. At the same time, Roosevelt admits that U.S. government gold obligations were at least $30 billion, worth 45 metric tons. So our obligations as the U.S. was almost 3 times more than all of the gold that existed in the world at that time. And that private U.S. corporations have promised another $60 billion, worth 90 metric tons. As citizens complied with the new law by turning in gold, the gold reserve of the United States and the Federal Reserve increased. After most of the public's gold was turned in, FDR raised the official price from $20.67 to $35 per troy ounce. How convenient. Gold cloth Federal Reserve notes were not recalled and remained in circulation, but they could no longer be exchanged for gold except by certain foreign central banks. Those with connections were able to buy valuable assets with mere paper. Wealth was concentrated in fewer hands. But negating gold obligations and confiscating gold was not enough. The people and entities responsible for this fiasco were concerned that the public would reject the new unbacked paper money and continue the bank runs by switching to silver bullion. A silver confiscation and a recall of currently circulating silver coins was unworkable, since it would be disastrous for commerce. The solution was twofold: end the minting of silver dollars and impose a silver tax. Any entity that made a profit on the transfer of silver bullion had to pay 50% of that profit as tax. The Silver Tax Act was imposed in 1934 and lasted until 1963. And here's just an example of somebody paying their taxes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and end it with this. We just need to prepare. Like I said, get all of your beans, band-aids, bullets, barters, bullion, get all of that stuff in order, because government does not care about you. What is taught in schools of how great a president FDR was. And he did this. Research this for yourself. Don't allow this to become an emotional thing for you, because we were taught this as children about how great FDR was. And he did this to his people, supposedly to his people. I did a video not too long ago. I said that I think that during the next systemic crisis, the majority of the people are going to be hurting so bad that they are going to agree with and do whatever the government tells them. What I'm reading you here, all of these things that happen, all of these things right here that I just read you that happened to the American people, how they were pretty much messed over, how their wealth was confiscated from them through the use of law, which is nothing but a person writing on a piece of paper saying, you're going to do this because I said so. Their wealth was confiscated from them. They were made to suffer. So what did they do? They said, sure. The president said, you need to turn in your gold? Yes, Mr. President. You know why? Because they were hurting so bad, because they had not prepared accordingly for that situation. that they said, sure, Mr. President, we'll do whatever you want us to do. Just please stop the pain. Please give us a shot of that antibiotic that I need so I don't have to hurt anymore. And most of the people, at least in the US or in the Western nations, when the next major systemic event, crisis happens, they are going to be begging for the government to help them. And they are not going to care how many liberties or how much of their wealth the government is stealing from them, because they're going to be in so much pain. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the main reason why you want to prep, why you want to be prepared, because it gives you some control over a situation that you cannot control fully. And those of you that don't prepare, you are going to be controlled, because you're going to be one of those that are begging for the government to take from someone else to give to you, and you will be more than willing to give up your liberties and your freedoms for that little bit of pain relief. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in today. If you stuck through this entire video, then you are definitely one of my VIPs. Okay? I do hope that you got something out of this. Just prepare. If you don't have all of your beans, your band-aids, your bullets, if you don't have all that stuff taken care of, make sure you take care of it. If you have all of that and you have a sufficient amount of preps that you think will get you through a severe crisis for 6 months to a year or more, then consider, and this is my opinion, I'm not telling you what to do, I am not a financial advisor, consider storing some of your wealth or holding some of your wealth in precious metals. I think that the people now get precious metals understand that the next time the government says you need to turn these in, they're not going to turn it in. And ladies and gentlemen, they're not going to go door to door. It'd be a logistical nightmare. A military unit can barely get from one training exercise to another. There's no way that they would go door to door, knocking it down, telling you to give me your 3 ounces of silver. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. If you'd like to support the channel, take a look at the links below. So remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. This is Alaska Prepper, and I'm out.